Hello again, everybody, and welcome to episode 84 of the Board Game Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Nick, and with me today is my co-host, Ayub.
Hello, hello, hello.
Ayub, we are in a new space, trying out to record here, so people listening to us, let us know your feedback if it sounds better, worse, or if there's no difference. And how are you? How was your day?
I'm all good. I'm a school teacher, and it was the day where we have to give the sad news to some of the students that I will not be their teacher anymore after summer. And of course, it was emotional for both them and me. So yeah.
Man, I remember when my teacher changed for the first time, I couldn't sleep. I was so sad that I lost my teacher that I had for 4 years. It was, oh, poor kids.
And I already got some cute letters,
Oh,
No, you please beg them to stay and if it can happen, promise you visit, more than our other teachers and stuff like that. So
that's very cool, forming those bonds.
Yeah, it's all good. It's gonna be good, and we're still in the same building, so
That's not the end of the world.
Exactly.
Yeah. Today we're continuing our echoes of the main game series. We're going to be talking about Rajas of the Ganges. But before that, Ayub, you have a question for me today?
Yes. So today's question from the philosophical corner of board games is how important is the first play of a game? Also considering not just the game itself, but the circumstances. So here I'm thinking everything from getting, being in a good mood from before you play, feeling not hungry and not tired, being with the right people, and along with that, how much do you protect your darlings? This game, I know if I don't play it in the right circumstances and all of that, I shouldn't play it because they might not like it.
Okay, twofold question. I'll start with the first one. It is 1,000% important because we need to play a lot of games, both for the podcast, the YouTube, and because we're omni-gamers. So playing a game for one time, most of the times will result in not playing the game again. It must either be a game that we really love, it must either be a game that we own, or a combination of the two. So first play, for me personally, is probably the most important things. I try and make the circumstances perfect for the games that I know that I am tending to like. For example, Shackleton Base is a game that I haven't played yet, but I know I'm going to like.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to think of the perfect time to, okay, let's play it today. I wasn't working last night. I'm not working tonight. Let's try and have time for it. But I know that realistically, that's not ever going to be the case because life gets in the way. So, unfortunately, it's 1,000% important for me, but there's not much I can do about it to answer your first question.
Yeah.
You want to answer the first before I move on to the second?
Yeah. I think it's also, now you said 1,000. My first thought was 80 out of 100, which is the same as 800 out of 1,000. Just because there's a little bit of we are good enough or we play enough to still be like, I feel like there was something and, maybe. But I 100% agree with you that it really needs a big push from you then to go and be like, okay, I'm going to go back to this game and see what it was about, because the feeling is also still there that I could play all these other games that are good or seem interesting. So definitely it matters a lot.
Cool. And so you remind me, what was the second part of the question?
Do you protect your darlings? If you have some games where you feel like it in the wrong situation, it could easily end up not being loved or liked.
The thing is, with my taste in games, I know that unfortunately is not the okay, this is your game. I know people are going to like it. I like games that other people tend to not like because of the nature of those games. One of my favorite types of games lately have been either roguelikes or video game adaptations to board games. And I know that these games, unless people have feelings from the video game coming into them, they're not going to like no matter how much I try. Let's take, for example, Heroes of Might and Magic. When we played it, it was the perfect situation. We both had a free day, the whole day. We put it out, we set it up, we had a whole day, we ate in between. But still, I knew that this game, you're going to like it, of course, but it's not going to be like an Ayub game, if you know what I mean. And other games feel like that. And, Slay the Spire, Dead Cells, Elder Scrolls, Kingdom Legacy, all these games are games that are not in the trend of being Euro games. Of course, I do like the other spectrum of games, like SETI, Minos, and Terraforming Mars, which I'm not going to like because they are good games. Their mechanics work in a way that we expect and we feel comfortable with. So I think that although I did try to do it a lot, protect my games from the past years, I think that now I don't care about it that much. I'm going to bring out the game if the opportunity presents itself, because especially since November when I moved out of the house with you, there are not many opportunities presenting themselves. So the opportunities to play are less, so I can't protect it. I just have to bring it out and hope for the best.
I am I'm a mix. So a great example is that we, as you heard in the last episode, were in a summer house. And there, one of the games that I did bring along was The Great Zimbabwe. But I did think that it was also a risky game to bring out because of the mix of group we were and how it is super independent of one of another. In kind of in a similar way, like the first time we played Sidereal Confluence, because I didn't know, but now in another time I might be like, okay, me playing with, it was me, Ulrik, and then it was Nick and Callan, and Nick and Callan were super opposite when it came to negotiating. So Nick would negotiate super much, Callan would just be like, whatever, which kind of is a bad mix in for this game, I felt. So then I might be like, well, two types like this, maybe I will bring out another game, just because I feel like that matters so much for that. And I think I do have some games like that, where I'm always like, if everybody else is enjoying the game, I'm probably enjoying the game more as well. So I don't think people would like this game, or some of my friends, luckily, thank you so much, love everything. So in those scenarios, I'm like, maybe I should bring out the things that I know not everybody will like, because I have a chance to play it.
Some people just enjoy the game, and board games are something that if you are not a board gamer, never ceases to amaze you. You're always going like, oh, how does that work? So we definitely have a few friends like that. So it's good to try your games with those people. Satisfied.
And then also shout out to Erkan, not just only the games that I know I like, that I want to enjoy with other people's, but even games I tend to might be like, I don't think this is it. He might boost, going back to talking about how important the first play is. And I remember playing a game of Between Two Cities, where you are building this little tableau of tiles with two different players, the one on your left and the one on your right. And at the end of the game, you will score your lowest, right? So you need to balance it. And Erkan was building with one, and then this girl, Elin, was building on the other side. And she's like, oh, we should put this. It's going to be super good. And Erkan just looked at her and said, no, I don't want to. And she's like, why not? It's good. He's like, yeah, but we're doing too good over here. I don't think it's good. I don't need so many points here. Because obviously it's good for her, both sides. And he was like, my other side is actually losing. And, just saying this straight to somebody's face, not trying to persuade them to be like, no, maybe we should do this. Just honestly saying, no. And we all had a lot of fun with that, So these type of people are hilarious.
Speaking of Erkan, do you have a game in your mind that he didn't like?
He didn't like?
Oh. I would be curious to.
There are some games where he's like, I can feel he's like, nah, but for most time he's fine with
such a good sport, man.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Great question as always, but now time for some echoes, my friend.
Oh yes.
You ready?
Yeah. So as Nick said, today is the main game is Rajas of the Ganges, and it's a game that came out in 2017 by the designer Inka Brand and Marcus Brand. Their highest rated game is, no surprise, Rajas of the Ganges, at 166 as around this recording. It might change depending on when in the future you're hearing it. And their second highest is Village at 246. And then from there, they actually designed a lot of exit games, which I didn't know, so that's kind of interesting. The artist is Dennis Lohausen, who also is the artist, one of the three artists on Ark Nova and Gaia Project. And I didn't know that, but actually seeing Gaia Project and Rajas of the Ganges, I'm like, hey, I can
see that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Both looking, for the first time you look at it, super busy. But once you get into it, you'll actually see how everything has a meaning and is actually a nice looking board. Nice. He's also the artist on A Feast for Odin and Civolution and many other games. So Lohausen has done a lot. Many different publishers, but originally from Huch or Hook, depending on where in the world you are, but it is a German company. and the BGG page has been viewed more than 1 million times.
Okay.
I like to see how much has been played on Board Game Arena, but it is sadly not on Board Game Arena. It got a standout achievement in 2018 for International Gamers Award, General Strategy Multiplayer, which is like a respected jury-based award in hobby board gaming. Originally, it was founded in 1999 as the Gamers' Choice Award, which some of you might know the award as. It got a lot of smaller module expansions, so no bigger expansions, and all of these modules were later collected into what we call 2 goodie boxes. Goodie Box 1 and Goodie Box 2, and they came out in 2019 and 2020, so not so long after the game. So what are we looking at? Well, thematically, it's in India, in the era of the aspiring Mughal Empire, and everything, is going well and good, and the empire has almost reached its greatest dimension. And then each player, of noble status of course, must improve their estate into magnificent and wealthy provinces. Keeping in mind the important role of karma, players balance their growth in a demanding interplay of prestige and prosperity. The one with the most successful outcome will truly become one of the nation's legendary leaders. Game objective is, of course, to get the most victory points, and it is a race between connecting your wealth and your fame. And this is something that I think we could actually, before I dive more into the game, just briefly talk a little bit about that. In this board game, you have 2 tracks on the outside of the board. One is fame, which is going from the left around, and one is wealth, and it's going the other way around, which is also your money. So whenever you spend money, you're actually going back on that track. And once those 2 tracks meet, that's the end game triggered. And I think this is one of the most unique end game conditions I ever seen. How do you feel about just this end game condition?
It builds tension in a way that no other end game trigger builds for me, because it's there, you're trying to balance it, but always one side feels better in the early game and the other feels better in the late game. So if you are going to push the one that goes like the wealth, well, not the wealth, the points, the fame, you're feeling bad because this is not advancing my engine. Yeah. But the genius that they did, especially with some of the expansions, is they put rewards there.
Yes.
So I love it. And of course, we've seen games replicated down the line, and I think it's a very good end game trigger mechanism.
Yeah, and I will say the Agnova being the one who
exactly,
and they even took it in such a similar way that fame is worth like 2-3 wealth points, and it's the same in Agnova and so on. So what type of game is this? It is a dice-driven worker placement game, meaning you will be using your dice as resources to activate the action you will take with your workers. You can have a maximum of 10 or 8 dice, depending on which mode on the game you're playing. And you have this little Kali statue, which have these hands, and you're placing the dice there. So instead of just having them in a pool in front of you and, you need to count them all of the time, it's very clear to see how many dice you have. Whenever you acquire a die, you roll it before adding it to your pool. Players take turn placing a single worker and take the corresponding action of the spot they go to. Each player starts with 3 workers, but it can later unlock up to 3 additional workers, leaving them with a maximum of 6 workers per round. A round is over once everyone has placed all their workers, and then the starting player elephant will rotate to the next player in turn order, and a new round can begin. So there's no upkeep in the game, actually. It's just flows and keeps going like that. The board is roughly made up of 4 sections. So we have the quarry, and the quarry has 2 types of action available with multiple open spots. The first one lets you do building actions on your personal province board by buying a tile from a market and adding it to your board. There are 12 stacks of tiles, 3 of each color: purple, blue, green, orange. So therefore you will always have 3 choices of every color. You buy these tiles by placing dice of the matching color, reaching or exceeding the minimum value shown on the tile. When adding these tiles to your board, you must make it so that it connects back to the main residence. We know that from a lot of games where it needs to connect with the road. And that's the only placement restriction. Although also connecting the tiles to the special yields at the side of the board will give you a huge benefit as well, and you will be looking to doing that. The other thing you can do in the quarry is, on the tiles that you build, you find mainly 2 types of benefits. You find buildings and you find markets. buildings gives you fame points and increase how prestigious your province is. So moving up one of the tracks we talked about, the one Nick mentioned earlier, is usually what you feel like, but this game has some cool things with it. And markers show one or more of the markers good with a matching coin value that you will receive immediately to your money track when you build a tile. The quarry has multiple spots with the price increasing in coin cost, ranging from 1 to 4. So if you go there early, it's cheaper to take this action, but later it will cost more. That's the biggest space. So the other 3 I will talk a little bit less about. Then you have the marketplace. There is either one of 3 market-specific spots, silk, tea, or spices, so what we talked about with the other tiles. And the value of the die you use when you go there determines how many of those tiles you can activate. So going with a 3 tile on the silk spot means you can activate 3 of your silk tiles and get that money, which means going up one of the tracks. And then there is 1 market of each type paying out its cost, but you don't need a die. So going there, you can just say, I need this silk, this, and one of each of the 3 silk, tea, spice. Pretty cool. There are 2 of those spots, but the same player cannot go to both spots. Then you have the harbor. Its cost is free, 1 or 2 coins. And depending whether you use a 1, 2, or 3 die, you're moving up this river track, and there you will get bonuses depending where on the track you're stopped. If there are other players, you jump over them. And then the last spot is the palace. You place a worker for free to require a single die. That's the bottom of the palace. Or you can pay 1 die to get 2 dice of another color, and that's fixed. So, for example, if you go to this orange spot, you might get 2 purple dice. If you go to the purple, you get 2 other, and so on. So it feels a little bit as a pass action, but you have that there. Then you have the concept of karma, where you have a little karma track, and whenever you spend 1 karma, you can flip one of your dice to the opposite side. The palace also has 6 specific spots where you can go with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 die. So going to the 6th spot, you need a specific 6 die, and that spot lets you move up the river. The first one gives you 2 fame and get the elephant, and those are just some different actions that do something specific for that die. That's just a overview of how the game kind of works, and we will now dive into, of course, some of the different things. So, first question will be, unless you, of course, want to add something, that is, how is the theme for you? With the whole thing of the, having the Kali statue, and you are building your province, and of course, it's a Euro game, so
yeah,
but
it is a Euro game in essence. The theme mostly comes for me from the artwork. 2 specific things in the game help me with the theme. First is the Callista statue, as you mentioned, because you see it and you instantly know, okay, it must be some sort of Indian or mythology or religion thing. And then I also like the first player token, which is this little elephant.
Yeah.
That's pretty unique,
Yeah.
I like that. But besides those 2 points, it is, as you said, just a Euro game for me. So theme doesn't really ooze out of this game.
Yeah.
Those 2 things help a little bit, and I find what you said really helpful, having a placeholder for your dice, because in many dice games you just have a pool in front of you, and it can get annoying, especially for newer players. But this is nice and organized, and I love organized, so I'm sold on the statue.
Yeah, and I think also the statue does, so, when you have 2 dice and you see all your empty hands, it gives you a bit of an urgency to maybe I need to get some more dice.
Exactly.
Where if you just had 2 dice in front of you, it might feel like, oh, I still have 2 dice, But the statue both shows you how much you have, but also how much you're potentially missing.
Exactly.
And I think that's a very interesting design decision. What about the whole... I talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but, the artwork, the graphic design, the presentation of the game. How do you feel about that?
I feel like the board is very busy. So when you look at it, especially for the first time, you're getting this feeling of, oof, were we playing this, really? But I think that once you get used to it and how exactly it looks, then it works fine. Artwork is nice. I like the different colors that exist on the board, that even though busy, once you understand the different quadrants you mentioned, then it all becomes clear. And the coloring of those helps. I could see this game like getting one of these huge new deluxe versions where everything would be it is one of those games that can benefit from something like that. But overall, I don't mind the artwork. It's not bad. I like it, actually. It's quite okay.
But like you said, I do think it takes some time to get into. And once you do, it's almost like in movies when you have a cult film where you're like something is bad, but you like that it's bad.
Yeah.
You like that it's it's made it unique and it made it different from everything else. When you take out a game, you also want to not look at the last game you played in a way. But I could definitely see sometimes some of the colors being a bit lighter and stuff like this. It's an interesting choice.
Well said. Yeah.
And of course, when you buy tiles, two of the tiles, blue and green, look so similar on the tile itself.
I knew you would mention that.
Yeah.
They do.
And I think in one sense, okay, whatever. But in another sense, I have caught myself multiple times looking back just to double check, is this green or is this blue? And that can be a bit annoying especially if you play the game a lot.
No, I agree.
The tracks and money being part of one of the tracks, so you in a way are paying your points. I think we need to talk more about that, paying your points.
It feels rough. Whenever I need to make a decision that costs me money in this game, I double think it. And I don't know if it's a good thing or if it's a feature, or if you should double think of spending it, or I should just spend it and get on with it. And I still don't know. And I've played the games, I think 10, 12 times. So definitely interesting. Don't know how I feel about it. I don't like spending money in this game.
Yeah.
I love gaining money in this game, which is hard, of course, especially in the early stages.
Yeah.
Where it should be easy. Anyway, back to you.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting concept, having the money on the points tracks, and that really helps with the whole, like you mentioned in the beginning of the overview. It gives this tension of like, oh, what are we? What am I doing here? I don't want to lose, the thing. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Unlocking your new workers from what is essentially 3 different tracks. So you have the fame track, where a new worker is awaiting you. You have the money track, where a new worker is awaiting you. And then you have the river track, where you could go far, but then you're maybe also skipping bonuses, but there's a worker there. How do you feel about the workers you unlock are on tracks?
I feel that it is a very nice feature in the game. And I mentioned it already that, the fame track, you don't want to go up early, but if you don't, you're losing out on a worker. The river, you're going to go slow, take all the resources, all the rewards. But if you go slow, you're losing a worker, and the game actually gives you a way to jump fast in the river.
Exactly.
So you're always thinking, oh, should I spend this? Because you need a 6 to go fast in the river. Should I spend this 6, which is a 6, right?
Yeah.
I can build almost everything to just jump in the river and get my worker, or should I wait? And the money worker, I think, is the one that comes naturally for everybody, because you need to advance there, otherwise you lose.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and it's also a little bit interesting with the river track, because there's another spot on the river track that says you can go far again, but you need someone else to go ahead of you so you can jump over them, and it's always a bit of fun to see how that plays out. Yeah, we talked a little bit about the statue holding the dice. Love that stuff. What do you think about the dice being a resource that is partially randomly generated?
I think it works in this game because no matter what side of the die you roll, you can always do something. The river wants low number, the palace needs every single number, and then building needs usually bigger is better.
Yeah.
Also, the karma is a resource that you get pretty much by doing anything, allows you to flip a die on the other side. So essentially, if you just have a little bit of karma every time you roll a die, you have 2 out of the 6 options on a die. And usually, unless the die is in the middle, one of them is a high number, one of them is a low number. So there is a lot of mitigation going on, and every single number on a die can be used. So I feel that it is good enough. No matter if you roll big or low, you're gonna have something to do.
Yeah, nice. I totally agree. There's always some type of use for the dice, so that's pretty good. There is some little background noise happening. We hope you can't hear it. If you can, just think of it as the undercover track to our podcast. There's some music in the background for once. But we'll see how it is in the editing. Then, how do you find the level of luck versus skill, and along with that, strategy versus the tactical nature of the game?
Speaking about the base game only, I feel like definitely skill wins every time. If somebody came and chose what sides they would get in all of their dice and they play it for the first time against an experienced player, I still think they would lose because no matter what you roll, you always have things to do. And I think that's part of the puzzle as well, trying to figure out what to do with the dice that you rolled. I personally play this game more tactically than strategically. You know, I can maybe look 1 or 2 rounds ahead, but I always want to do what's best for me in the moment. And in my experience, which is 12 to 15 games, that works.
Yeah.
So definitely tactical for me in this game.
Yeah, and I think the whole nature of you're rolling your dice, you wanna use those dice to the best advantage. Maybe you roll a low dice. Oh well, this low dice will activate these low spots, which might give me 2 new dice and some extra benefit. Or I flip this little tile, which now gave me 2 purple dice, or like a purple and a green. How can I use these? So if you go too heavily into the strategy, you might be like messed up by the game, giving you other things than what you need. And of course, also if you only go tactical, you might miss out on different stuff. So I totally agree with that. Cool. I think just because there is so much, we'll leave it now at that for this game, and we will go into something else, something that came out a few years later.
Jumping on 3 years into the future, we have Rajas of the Ganges, The Die Charmers, released in 2020. Designers Inka and Marcus Brandt. Same artist, Dennis Lohausen, and published by Hutch. Rajas of the Ganges, The Dice Charmer is a roll and write game where it has pretty much the same thing and strategy as the original game, but the way the game works is that we roll 8 dice of different colors, and then the first player picks one, removes one from the pool, and then everybody else chooses one and does an action. There are 4 different colors of dice, and every one corresponds to an action. Purple dice allow you to collect new goods that you can later on sell. The green dice allows you to build roads and connect your residents to buildings and markets in your province. Then the blue dice, you advancing in the river, just like the original game, and then the orange dice enable you to carry out the palace action. So the actions are pretty much the same. The way you do them is different. The end game is the same. You have to cross the 2 tracks. And I am in no means nearly as well-versed in this game as I am in the original, because I've only played this game twice. I did see a bit more videos just to prepare for this episode, but let me ask you, Ayub, you've played both of the games enough. How does this compare to the original game?
Yeah, it's interesting with some of these echoes, because what are we interested in from an echo? Do we want the same game in a smaller version, or do we want a different game which has enough DNA for you to go like,
I see that.
Yeah, I kind of know this game just because of that. And I definitely think this game is the second part, You have the river track. It technically works way different here. It's nothing about numbers, but it is still the idea of the further you go, the more you pass things that you cannot get. Although in this game you can.
There's a mechanism to actually activate things you've passed that are behind you.
So I like that. I like that the game, and this was just an example, but I like that I think with most of the actions, they feel way different here, but they all feel connected to the echo, to the main game.
If you had a person that hasn't played this or the base game, and they want to dive into Rajas of the Ganges in general, they're not a super complex board gamer like us, but they would like to see, they listen to the episode, they want to dive in. Would you recommend them play the Dice Charmers, or would you dive straight into the Rajas of the Ganges game?
I would go straight into the Rajas of the Ganges game.
Okay.
And I would do that, like you mentioned a bit earlier, probably with... no, we haven't talked about that, but never mind. But probably not without too many expansions and stuff. Yeah.
Makes sense. And another question here for you. What about you? Would you ever, you're in the house chilling, you're in the mood, would this game ever pop up for you instead of the Rajas of the Ganges game? What would the benefits in playing this be in contrast to just playing Rajas of the Ganges?
Yeah,
why would you play this?
Yeah, I definitely feel, and maybe this is just the nature of roll and writes and flip and writes, that it feels more chill, I'm rolling something, I'm picking from the dice, and I'm crossing, and I'm drawing. It has a more comporistic nature in that sense that, I'm drawing this lets me get this lets me get this, and it feels nice. It also plays shorter, and really good at all the player counts actually. So having, I don't want to also set up a huge game. This game is very easy. You just take a piece of paper and roll some dice.
Boom.
The game is set up from the beginning, really, and takes way less space. So there are like many benefits of it being not a smaller version of the actual game, but a smaller version of some of the same ideas.
Exactly. And for all of you solo gamers out there, there is an unofficial solo variant for this game on BGG where it's kind of like beat your own score, but you also have a time limit to do so. I find it pretty interesting. Of course, I haven't dived into it, not having a copy of the game, but I looked at the rules and it seemed like, as a flip and roll and write fan, something that I would definitely dip my toes in for sure. Definitely seemed interesting.
Nice.
All right, what else do we have? There's another echo of Rages of the Ganges, if I recall correctly, right?
Another echo.
Yeah.
Not just moving a little bit, but actually moving all the way forward to 2024.
Oh,
Which
okay.
is the BGG release date. But I feel it came out slightly later. But anyways, that's probably where it was first available anywhere. The ranking is going way lower now. We're at 5,024. But of course, still by the designer Inka Brand, Marcus Brand, and still the same artist, Dennis Lohausen. And I think the first thing I just want to put a light on here is that if you look at the at how they describe the theme, you can definitely feel that they went more like, we know that this is a mini game of our original game, and I don't know. Maybe I'll go ahead and say almost a bit lazy, but maybe they didn't need to dive into it like that. So I'll just actually gonna read up something that is from the thematical explanation in the rulebook. Take a journey through time to India in the era of the emerging Mughal Empire, as the Rajas and Ranis build magnificent buildings on the Ganges and sell valuable goods for fame and wealth. You can see all the dice cards in your hand, but now you must decide wisely and with foresight how to use them. Harness your ship's cargo and the influence of Palan's residents to gain karma, additional cards, or other rewards. And if you have 3 of a kind, you get a versatile administrator to help expand your provinces. In the end, it will become clear whose strategy yielded the best results. So, I maybe exaggerate a bit, but what I mean is that, in the beginning I read it and I'm like, okay, this is the thematic part, and all of a sudden it's like dice cards in your hand. I was like, oh, okay, this is something else. But they didn't need to do the thing. If you really want to dive into that, you probably should look at the original Rajas game and on all of that. And so this is a way smaller and more abstract kind of game in some sense. So it makes sense that they don't make a huge, 3 pages thematic change for that. The object of this game is that it's an open draft game that is also a race to flip your 6 personal player cards first. You flip your player cards either with 6 money, starting from the right, or 3 fame, starting from the left. So something we also see from the original game. And be the first to turn all cards to win. That's how you win. And the game will also end in that round where somebody does it. And if more people do it, there are some tiebreakers. And then from the main, the table in between you have face-up cards, and depending on the player count, they're between 12 and 12 and 20 face-up cards. On your turn, you will do exactly 1 of 5 actions. So we'll just go through them and then talk a bit more about the actual game. You can take a dice card. All of the cards on the table have some type of building or something on them. But on the back of the card, they have a dice and a value. So here they change the thing. We can still have dice without having dice. You just roll the dice by taking up a card and be like, oh, I rolled a 5. And you could see that it was green in the back, just not what it was. Kind of like if you take a green die from a pool and roll it. The second thing you can do is you can take a building card. And when you take a building card, just like building buildings in original ranges, you will need to pay at least a certain amount of value in a specific color die. So a green 7. You can use multiple cards, but you need to reach 7 to then take that building. And those buildings will yield fame or other stuff like that. If you get 3 buildings of the same type or 3 buildings of a different type, you will lose those buildings and get an administrator. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Then you can take a ship card. The ship go in front of you. The ship goes from number 1 to 28. If you already have a ship, you either continue your line if that number is now higher than the previous number, or if it is lower, you lose your previous ship and just start with the new ship. And they also have many different actions on them. If you manage to build a line of 3 ships, you lose all the ships to get an administrator. Then you can take a good cards. Good cards are free to take. They don't cost any dice. I should mention that the ship cards cost a specific value, not a color, so a 3 or a 2 or whatever. But good cards are just free to take. They will have 1 or more goods on them, and sometimes also just a 1 coin bonus that you will get immediately. If you have 3 different types of goods, you will lose them all to get money. Or if you have 3 of the same type of good, you will lose them all to get money. If some of your cards have multiple goods, or also previously with the buildings, you will technically lose that extra building. But if you somehow can manage to have like 3 of the same type of goods twice, you will get all of those benefits. So that's a pretty cool thing. And then the last thing you can do is you can take a palace action. There are, similar to the main game, a certain amount of different palace actions with different people on them, and they will always be the same. So the 5 always do the same, the 6 always do the same, and so on. So the currency of dice, fun, annoying, too gimmicky, something else. How do you feel about that?
Well, if you come from having played the main game of Rajas of the Ganges, then it definitely makes sense the way it's used. You know, every card is a different color and it's a different dice side. So you are actually, in a sense, drawing rolling a dice. If you play this without having played the main game, though, then it's a bit quirky. Then it feels a little bit like, why couldn't have it just been a dice roll, you know? But I think it works. I'm not the biggest fan, as I said already. You can actually, after you play the game a few times, start memorizing some cards. Not all of them, of course. There are like 140 something, but at least a few of them. So, yeah, it's fine. Not the biggest fan.
Yeah, I did think about the thing you also said. Will it potentially, and of course I could see it if you are. I don't think this game should be that, but if it's like a lifestyle game and you're playing it all the time, you might start to see some of the thing. There are 144 cards. It is a lot to remember, and it's also a lot less useful if you only remember few things. But definitely something that I think is fun. Maybe it is too weird, but it's also fun. And if the main game didn't exist, I probably would think it was a little bit stupid. But or something like that. But since the main game does exist, I feel like it's a fun little way to kind of, let's say, make honor to its predecessor. Talking about that, do you feel like it feels like the real game? You know, you have karma, you have fame and money that you need to flip. You have the palace actions and the cards and all of that. Does it remind you of Rajas of the Ganges?
Well, the theme is definitely there. As you just mentioned, you have karma, you have all the different nobles, you have the river, you have all the same things. The thing is, the gameplay is what really differentiates it from it. Because in this game, all you're doing on your turn technically is you just, play a card or take a card or build something. And it is very different in many ways from the original Rajas of the Ganges, which is just a dice worker placement game. So, to answer your question, I don't think it really suits what the main game does, but it does have some of the same elements regarding theme to the main game.
Is there, now that you mentioned that, similar to what you asked earlier, is there a situation where it's like, I'm bringing this out, instead of just Rajas of the Ganges?
Short answer, no. Main reason is that even if I'm playing with somebody that's not an actual board gamer, I think I have the capacity to let them enjoy the original Rajas of the Ganges by just explaining it for 5, 10, 15 minutes. So there really is no world where I would bring this out instead of Rajas of the Ganges. Maybe in a world where I don't own Rajas of the Ganges, or if Rajas of the Ganges isn't readily available, then yeah, that'll be the only way this game comes out at my table.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of also touch a little bit on it, the simplicity that you just do one thing. You know, mention all of those 5 actions, but they are really just, do what it says on the card or take a card up. I do like it. I do feel like it's a little bit similar to more like a Splendor type of game where Righteous of the Ganges is this, worker placement games with dice. So it does feel different enough for me, although I no spoiler here, I prefer Righteous. But yeah, so I mentioned all these ways to get administrators. They're these super OP cards that are just feels nice to have in front of you, and you can discard them to do one of many things. Draw more dice cards, use him to take an extra turn, or he can be a joker dice of any color and value. How do you feel about the administrators?
I feel that they were created to fill a gap in gameplay. What do I mean by that? The administrators are a way to prevent you from going infinite in many different ways, and you can also use them to actually advance your strategy. You can play the game well without never using them, but if they were not existing, then there would be a problem where you would just infinitely gather some things and then you could choose to just spend them all at once, or you could amass them. So I feel like they should exist for gameplay reasons. I just feel like that thematically, they don't really make much sense, especially the way you acquire them.
I played it with some of the people from my work, and one guy who is a good player and also won, he did say something interesting, because in the beginning he said he really want to get those administrators, but as he was playing, he was like, they're not giving me points. They're giving me these cool things, but they're not helping me to win. They make it easier for me to do all these type of things, but I actually need to focus on getting money and fame. And I think that's a little bit interesting. Like he's seeing things very good, but once you play these type of games more, understanding that this is a cool thing that you should use to get what makes you win, but it's not what makes you win necessarily. Flipping over 6 cards to win, and then each of these cards, you can actually play it in 2 ways, but each of these cards you flip will have a bonus on the back, which is all have the same 6, but the order is random. How did you feel about that?
I feel like they could be asymmetrical, if that's your question, but for a game this small, I really don't think it matters that much. Them being in a random order, but being the same for everyone, can be a little bit, I got this at the perfect moment, but that's not necessarily a feeling in a game that it is bad. I actually feel it's healthy for a game to have that feeling, so it doesn't really make much difference for me. I enjoy them quite a bit.
I like it too. There is a variant that I haven't tried at all, where you are allowed to decide the order before the game starts. So you can say, I want to have my extra turn around the second card or something like that, which is actually cool. But I think for the first few times, yeah. And then playtime is rather short, similar, well, it's shorter than the dice game, but that's also, I guess, I+ for this game. So, without further ado, as we do in all the Echoes episodes, we will just say in order how we like them. And starting from the bottom.
So, you probably have guessed it by the way I've been speaking about this game, but my number 3 is definitely Cards and Karma by a big mile. I have only played it 5 times, so you never know, but I think 5 times for me is enough to know what I like and don't like about a game. And let me tell you, Cards and Karma is not a Nick game. It's not a bad game necessarily, it's just a game that really does not click with what I like doing in games. In theory, it's nice, but in practice, I did find the other 2 games being way more enjoyable. And even though the theme is the same across the 3, gameplay is really lacking for my personal taste. So my number 3 is Cards and Karma.
I was hesitant. I was back and forth because I actually enjoy the card game here, the Cards and Karma. But I will say with more repeated plays, it was the less exciting of the 3. So it also ended up on the 3rd spot for me. Although, ask me a month ago, and I probably would not have been there. So they are close for me. I think, unlike maybe for you. Yeah.
Second spot will go to the dice game, the roll and write one. It is actually pretty cool. I've only played it twice, but I have a tendency to like roll and flip and rights, and this one did it right. It was a little bit confusing with the thing with the roads you mentioned earlier, but apart from that, I found the game to be pretty nice. It flowed well, and I would definitely much rather play a roll and write game of a main game that I love, an echo of a game that I love, than play that Cards and Karma game that we discussed earlier.
Yeah, Dice Jam is also number 2 for me. It's not complicated, but the first time you try and understand how you use the green dice to build roads, there are some small rules they did so you couldn't connect too easily with how you must kind of be within one little square box, and it annoys me. It annoys me that I need to explain this every time, and I need to make sure, because I'm even a little bit confused about it. Even though I know exactly how it works, it's still confusing, and that's the biggest drawback, because everything else seems so nice and understandable. So when you play it, it's just like, yay, boom, 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 go do this, get this. But that little thing is always like, and when someone asks me, I need to make sure I answer them right. So, but yeah, really cool game.
Hello everybody, this is Nick from the editing studio. Unfortunately, we had some issues with the ending of the episode, so I'm just gonna make a wrap here. Both me and you had the game at number 1, which of course goes back to it being one of the first games that we actually played together. We had it in our first original 5 on the fly, the original 5x5, where we had to play 5 games 5 times each. And we played it there, and I mean, after playing it for so long in such a small period of time, we kind of fell off of it. I know I played it like 5 or 6 times since. You probably played a few more, but yeah, we definitely agree on it being the best of the 3. It's actually coincidentally the first time for this Echoes of the Main Game episode where we actually agreed on on the order of the games, so that is also kind of cool. And we had originally also recorded a 5 on the fly here at the end of the episode, but since that files got corrupted, there's no actual way for me to tell you the games. I do have them. Maybe I'll make a poll of them at some point, but just me naming them here would not do you justice. But anyways, thank you all so much for tuning in and listening. We apologize for the way this episode ended roughly. We hope you stay with us for the next episode, where we're going to be diving back into our letter series. I think next episode is T. Almost closing in on that. We're also closing in on 100 episodes, so stay tuned for that, because something awesome is going to happen. On behalf of both me and Ayub, thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you next time.